Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to The Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman. Want to wish you a happy new month. This is our first program in the month of September. Today, I want to begin by saluting our ASA that are doing a marvelous job defending our homeland, defending our territory, defending our people. I salute you all. I also want to send greetings to our brothers and sisters, our family members that are living in neighboring La République du Cameroon and longing for that day when we'll all return to Ambazonia to build our great nation. I also like to extend greetings to our friends and family that have been forced to flee to neighboring Nigeria and other parts of the world, all awaiting the day that we reclaim Boya. Today I have with us on the program, The Horizon, the voice of the Amber woman, one of our gifted barrister team, Mbeseha, who is going to talk to us about events that affect our nation. We're talking about problems that have been shared by our own Secretary of State, Dr. Mungwa, during the past weeks. And so, without further ado, I will have Barrister Team just say a word of greetings, and then we'll delve into the program. Welcome to the Horizon, Barrister.
Thank you, Madam, for having me. And again, congratulations for being here with us. Specifically, before anything else, I want to say thank you to the ASAs of FACO based on the news that we just got this morning.
Yes.
We are winning and we are winning. The struggle is moving on. And so once more, thank you for bringing me. I will do my best to complement what Dr. Mungo has put out there or clarify some of the issues.
Yes.
Over to you.
Yes, I also want to echo that sentiment, thanking the ASA for the great job carried out in FACO. So we are defending our territory. Those who are not supposed to be in that land should not be in that land. So this is just the work to defend our homeland. So we have been listening to a series of audios from the Secretary of State of Communication, Dr. Mungwa, titled Truth in Resistance, Clarity in Crisis. Truth in Resistance, Clarity in Crisis. And we're going to go through some of those audios and have them, some of them are really events that have happened recently or events that have happened not too long ago. But most importantly, this month, September and October, are crucial. They're very important months in our journey. And some of these videos will really explain what happened decades ago and why we are here today. So without further ado, I'm going to have the first, usher in the first audio, which is Bia's Prisoners Gambit, Cheap Tricks Will Not Break Ambazonia. If we can see that first audio video, we'll start from there and then move on to other relevant topics.
Today is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Today's editorial is titled, Bia's Prisoner Gambit, Cheap Tricks Will Not Break Ambazonia. Fellow Ambazonians, good day. The Bia junta has returned to its old game of deceit. With its fraudulent October 12th election around the corner, the regime now pretends to play the role of benefactor. They may release a few of our prisoners of war, perhaps even parade Sisiko Ayuk Tabe and his peers, and then call it a gesture of peace. But we know better. Our leaders are not criminals. They were kidnapped in Nigeria, illegally renditioned to Cameroon, and locked away in violation of international law. The Abuja High Court ordered their return to Nigeria and awarded damages in 2019. Yet the junta still defies justice and uses our leaders as pawn in its survival game. Let us be clear, Ambazonia's dignity does not depend on Cameroon's prison gates. Every prisoner of war must be released. They must be indemnified. Families of those who died under custody must be compensated. Release is not a gift, it is a right, and restitution for crimes committed. Our people must not be deceived. Cameroon's October 12th event is not an election, it is a charade. No election in Ambazonia, no staged pardon, no selective release, no propaganda will bend our will. The government in exile under President Samuel Ikemisako reminds the world the only path to peace is a third-party mediated negotiation between two sovereign neighbors. Until then, our resistance will remain unbroken and our cause unstoppable. This has been the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis.
Thank you so much. So that audio is telling us what may happen within the next few months, knowing that there's an election coming up October 12th. But let's start from what happened to our leaders. Barrister, just tell us the ramifications, and including what the Abuja High Court declared. Start from there, and then let's proceed.
Well, we all know that on the 5th of January 2018, the people, the Naira 10, were adopted illegally from a foreign country, Nigeria, renditioned to Cameroon, and tried before a military tribunal. And they are today still serving time there. And so, as far as this topic is concerned, for today, we should remind ourselves, and in the Yaoundé and the world at large, that it is not about the Naira 10. It's not about the leadership. It's about all the people they have adopted and sent to prison. It is about the illegalities that accompany it. I don't even call them prisoners of war. The right definition should be hostages of war. Because their action from day one, be they the ones in Naira 10, or the ones they have taken from Bamenda Boya or anywhere else to Yaoundé, are manifestly illegal and null and void at law. Nobody, not even the ones in Bamenda or Kumba or wherever, were arrested by any warrant of arrest. They were all simply adopted to Yaoundé. None of those people they are keeping there, including the Naira 10, was ever a soldier. They were put on trial before a military tribunal. All these things make this thing manifestly illegal. They make the trial null. And so keeping them under any circumstances illegal. And so I would prefer to call them prisoner war hostages. They are just hostages. And as Dr. Mongwa puts it in that segment there, setting them free is not a gift. It's just doing what is supposed to have been done a long time ago. Be they the ones of Bamenda, the ones of Kumba, the ones of Nigeria, keeping them in detention is just manifestly illegal. The trial, the process was null and void. The trial itself was null and void. And so, again, if they venture to release them, that will not be news. This is another election cycle. In the last election cycle, remember, when they adopted Kamto, They also released Camto without any formal charge. And along with Camto, they released some of our leaders at the time, Agombala, Niba Fontaine, and others. And then they have been taken to jail for what? For doing nothing. What was the purpose of releasing them? They thought the war would end. 70 years into that mandate, the war has not ended. Releasing one, two, three, or even all is not going to end the war. And so that's what Dr. Mongo calls it a gambit. Release all, that's right. That's the right approach. Because if you declare the war legally, you must have to end the war. Over to you.
Yeah, still on that subject. So, what do you think of this possibility? And this is just in line with what Dr. Monga said in that audio. What do you think if the eve before the elections, or a couple of days before the elections, we suddenly hear that Seseko Ayuktabe has been released with some of the other leaders that were locked up? Do you think that could be a distraction big enough to make sure that the elections go uninterrupted, because people will be distracted with one news while they continue with their fraudulent elections and have the coronation that is really what is going on be really take place?
Well, again, it is really a gambit because I've just said it is not about Sisiko. It is not about the Nara 10. Because in this struggle, in this particular incident, I don't know who is an Ambazonia who has not tasted this thing of being
Right.
locked up. So you release them. If you release the 10 families, they and their wives and their family will be okay. We shall be okay. But what of the thousands of others who are there? They have families. Why are you keeping them there for? That's what I've said earlier. It is not about the leadership. And I've explained that. If it had been about the leadership, releasing Agombala and Iba Fontaine in 2019, I think, would have ended the struggle. That would have been the end of the thing. But release them in the mistaken belief that our concern is the leadership. It was not the concern in last time, 2018. It is not the concern today. Because whether it is leadership or any other person, the leaders are just human beings. The other people, parents, and others, they are just human beings. They will have gone through the same process. Being adopted for doing nothing, being jailed for doing nothing. And so the applied is the same cause, the same effect. Again, as a matter of principle, their release should be unconditional because they are being held as hostages was illegal, manifestly illegal. The process by itself was void and remains void up in issue. So that cannot appease anybody. It just reminds us that the thing that they can capture, if it were possible for them, they will lock up every single Ambazonia.
Right.
But they will need more money from abroad to build prisons for 8 million people. Over to you.
Thank you so much. So the take-home message is that it doesn't matter what they do, whether they release the leaders, they release all the Ambazonian prisoners that are locked up. It doesn't matter. Ambazonia is still on course to fight for their own complete recognition and complete control of their territory. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next video. This one has a little bit more meat to it. Prophets and courtiers, the church, the regime, the people's verdict on Ambazonia. If we can see that video next, and then we'll talk about those relevant people that have had a part to play in where we are now and what we expect of future church members or leaders to do to make sure that we gain our rightful freedom. The video, please.
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis. Today is Monday, and our editorial is titled Prophets and Courtiers: The Church, the Regime, and the People's Verdict on Ambazonia. Fellow Ambazonians, good day. From the hills of South in Boy Division came men who spoke with courage. Saw once leaned to Dr. Endele's side in the politics of the 1950s. But out of that same soil rose voices of conscience, men who chose truth above fear. The first was Professor Bernard Fandon, a Catholic lay priest in training, a cabinet minister, and a great academic. He warned that the federal experiment of 1961 was fragile. He wrote The Task of Today, showing that without mutual respect, the union would collapse into domination. Decades later came Joseph Wilbur, another son of Saul. In 2016, he shook the National Assembly with words that still echo: when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes a duty. Wilbur carried forward Fondon's courage, telling the regime inside their own chamber that Ambazonia would not be silenced. Then came the prelates, Cardinal Christian Toomey and Archbishop Paul Mbeseha, both sons of Saul, both fearless in the face of power. Cardinal Toomey began in Yagua, served in Garwa, and later Douala. At the Grand National Dialogue of 2019, the regime tried to bury independence, but Toomey allowed it onto the ballot. The people voted, and 69% chose independence. That moment shook Yaoundé. Before Ngongo Ferdinand and regime officials, Toomey told the truth. He angered the state, but won the people's trust. Archbishop Mbeseha built institutions and preached moral consistency. Sadly, his prophetic spirit did not live on in his successor. Today, their legacy shines in Francophone clergy. Bishop Yauda of Yagua, Archbishop Kleda of Douala. They have spoken against corruption and injustice, keeping alive the line of prophecy. But not all chose courage. Some became courtiers of the regime. Archbishop Andrew Kier, now in Bamenda, tried to coerce his former classmate, Dr. Samuel Ikumasako, to abandon independence. He failed and later was rewarded with a free ride to the Canada monologue. Bishop Michael Bibi, now in Boya, echoed Yaoundé's lines. He scolded Ambazonians for resisting while keeping quiet on state atrocities. Reverend Samuel Funke, moderator of the Presbyterian Church, shocked his flock in Bali. After soldiers killed civilians, he blamed the locals. Later, Bia's portrait appeared at his office door. He too enjoyed a free ride to the Canada monologue. Funke once bragged that he would destroy his adversaries with his pen, but he has since fallen silent. Perhaps he no longer dares, or perhaps he has realized there are stronger writers than he imagined. Today, Ambazonia has a voice, not from a corrupt pulpit, but from the peoples themselves. Fellow Ambazonians, the church is divided. The prophets, Fandon, Wilbur, Toomey, Mbeseha, Yauda, Kleda, who stood for dignity and truth. The courtiers, Nkier, Bibi, Funky, who bent to power, and the people, whose verdict at the Grand National Dialogue was clear: 69% for independence. History will remember prophets for their courage, courtiers for their compromises, and the people for their demand for freedom. From the hills of South Imboy to Douala to Yagua, the prophetic flame is alive, and one truth cannot be denied: Ambazonia's destiny is independence. This has been the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis.
Thank you so much for that clip. So let's start with the prophets, the prophets that were of late, talking about Bernard Fallon. You want to share something about Bernard Fallon, please?
Well, I think, but Bernard Furlong is a great man. Most of us, at least, have read about him. But Bernard Furlong is called Dr. Furlong. He had a PhD,
Yes, Dr. Fowler.
probably in language, because he was very active from 61. He was in Fumban as a translator. And so he understood French perfectly well. He is the one who successfully translated the so-called national anthem of Cameroon into English in 1963-64. So that's Furlong, but he was also a very powerful guy, a man with a lot of foresight. But like many Ambazonians, he was led into the belief that they were dealing with people of the same caliber.
Mm-hmm.
Furlong, he even served as a government minister, Minister of Health in Yaoundé. And I think, if records are correct, he was even rebuked for refusing to ride in the government car. He rode in a Volkswagen and kept his profile high. Among the jobs that he did, in addition to this translation, Furlong wrote many things. Among them, as far as this struggle is concerned, he wrote, "Shall we make Omar?" He saw the things coming and asked the
Mm-hmm.
question, "Shall we make Omar? Shall we destroy or we shall be?" When he saw what Ahijah was doing. And so this is a man with the prophetic language. But he came there. How did he get to where he was? He went through the seminary. His ambition was to become a priest. But he never became a priest. But the truth, the spirit of priesthood never left him. The spirit of truth never left him. The spirit of humility remained with him until he died. And again, we are told that back in 1972, when Ahijah wanted to destroy the whole thing, he called the referendum of June 20, 1972. And people gathered in Furlong's house in Yaoundé. He was in Yaoundé then. To say, what do we do? We're just 10 years in this thing, and these guys are destroying the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They gathered in Furlong's house. And then, of course, using the 1962 Ordinance on Repression of Terrorism or whatever it did, they came and surrounded the house and wanted to arrest them. Why he said, let us disperse. God will fight this thing for us in the future. That's Furlong. He was if he was one who interpreted, who was the interpreter? I saw the list of people who attended the Fuman conference. Among the 12 delegates from Cameroon Republic,
Mm-hmm.
I did not see anybody with the mastery of the language. There was no interpreter there.
Right.
Only Fancha came with the delegation, including Furlong, as the interpreter. So he knows the full stop, the corners of whatever went on in Fumba. He was from there day one, but entering the struggle as a humble servant, a man of truth, a man of humility. That's his background. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Moving on, let's talk about the other prophets, the other great leaders that some have gone ahead of us also, like Tumi, Cardinal Tumi, and of course, Wiba. And uh, he mentioned Bishop Viziku and
Basically,
Vizikov, yes, and others. I'd like you to also say or describe what parts they have played in really standing for the truth. And then we'll contrast with leaders like, I don't want to call them really leaders, but they're church leaders like Nkia, Bishop Nkia, the Reverend Funky, and Michael Bibi, those who are really standing with La République du Cameroon to continue to subjugate us. Shed some more light about the great prophets that have stood the test of time, that are always telling the truth and standing for the side of justice.
well, Christian Toomey, another son of Banso Islamso guy, became a cardinal. But he is one of the people who understood the system so perfectly well. He was the first Anglophone, call it Anglophone. He was in the Catholic seminary in Bangui. when he was called off to become the Bishop of Yagua in the far north in 1978, I think. When he came to Yagua in 1978 as the first black bishop of Yagua, I was there. He too mastered French so well. That's why he was sent there. And he told his story himself of how they wanted to send him to go and study in Rome. He said he wanted to go to France because the country was bilingual. He would like to come and serve his country. That's why he ended up in France. That's why he studied French. He was able to serve first as the Bishop of Yagua, secondly as the Archbishop of Garoua, and then as the Archbishop Cardinal in Douala. But that's the main issue is his truthfulness. He's the one who are told, conducted a survey of Anglophones, they call it. What do you really want? And the result of the survey showed that, look, we want 69% said absolute independence, what we can call today absolute separation. But he made this known to the authorities that he was not telling it behind the screen. He told them, address this thing, these people, talk to them. If it is a question of having independence, let them have it if they want it, because they are the ones who came to join you. And of course, they never listened to it. They want to use you. They said no. Remember that in 2016 when the thing started, they had said the form of state was never a thing to be discussed. Despite of all this that Christian Tumi did, they called their Grand National Dialogue. And like any other Ambazonia, he was an Ambazonian, they called the Grand National Dialogue and brought him there. And curiously met him, I think one of the key members of the decentralization committee, in order to silence him, he and Abumbala. But he had told them the truth. If the people want to go, let them go, because they voted to come here. Before I leave that particular second, there's one person who was forgotten to mention there. That is the retired Archbishop of Bamenda, the one he has succeeded, Fontem Esho. He's also Ambazonia. He comes from Kupe Manoguba, comes from Beta. He's the one who told Yaoundé publicly that there's nothing like one and indivisible, because the community you're talking about is made up of the free will of the people of southern Cameroon, called it West Cameroon. That was the prelate. He's retired now, he's still alive. And then again, I'll finish with the prelate before I come to all. Let us take Cleda. Cleda is the Archbishop of Douala. When this thing started, Cleda was the president of the Episcopal Council of Cameroon. That is, of all the bishops put together. And under that canopy, they wrote to President Paul Biya, this problem is so difficult, will you receive us as bishops of Cameroon? Paul never replied to them. And Cleda was not ashamed of that. In a press conference publicly, Cleda said, look, we've written to the president many times about this thing. He's not addressing us. He has refused to receive us. But what is important is that he said this. And what happened right there, on the view of everybody, Archbishop Andrew Nkia came there forward and said, look, he's not talking to you as a president of the council, but he's talking to us. Who are these us? According to him, the us he was referring to were the bishops of the Northwest and Southwest, the five bishops there. He now made himself, he extricated himself from the National Council and created his own council to talk to Paul Biya. This is the National Council. It is not me inventing this. He said this himself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so this is Tumi, back to Tumi, telling the truth until he died.
Yeah.
He was not afraid of anybody, but he's also a good man. He's a victim of the system. When he said, I don't want to go and study in Rome, I want to go and study in France, he believed in something they call Cameroon. And he served in Yagua wholeheartedly. He served in Garoua wholeheartedly. He served in Douala until he died. This is a man with honesty. But serving there, having pension there and dying there did not change his beliefs. He needed to tell the truth, and he told it. And so we can move from there and go to uh, Wilbur. Wilbur is still alive.
Yeah.
If there's anybody who has ever been prophetic, it is Wilbur. Because you
Yeah.
can be quoted, you can call him, you can discuss with him. All of us know what Wilbur did. Wilbur went
Yes.
to, he was a member of parliament. I stood on the floor of parliament, the National Assembly, they call it in Cameroon. And we're all aware of what he said. He said, look, he called it West Cameroon. That he had addressed this thing, he had gone to the to ministers, and they told him, get out. He voted the camp. What did he do? He told them, look, until this prophetic now, if you don't solve this problem, when the Anglophones will rise,
Mm-hmm.
go and bring the army from France and add to yours. You will not defeat them. Is it prophetic enough? Of course. 80 years into it, they have not defeated us. But what happened to Wilbur? Wilbur is in exile. For doing what? For speaking the truth on the floor of Parliament.
Yeah.
They signed an arrest warrant for him. He fled for his dear life and he's out. The prophecy is living it now. They have brought everything they could. They have not been able to defeat us. And the events of today, as we speak, in Moyoka, are a fulfillment of that prophecy of Wilbur. Bring more tanks. I've said it earlier sometimes. You don't even have helicopters. Bring them. They'll all be brought. Only way it is address the Anglophone problem they call you. That's how you call it. The appropriate way. And then stop the war that you cause yourself. That's prophetic enough. You can say congratulations to Wilbur. Thank you. And may your soul rest in peace, Christian Toomey. Thank you, Mr. Retired Bishop, Archbishop Esau. And thank you, Archbishop Cleda, for stepping in. But then, that is the prophecy. If you want, I can now address the courtiers. The courtiers are not very many. Who are the courtiers? They are people who are self-imposed. And I would address just a few. I've mentioned his name. This is Andrew, who went to the Grand National Dialogue as a representative of these five bishops of the southern Cameroon. There's the Bishop of Bamenda, he's the Archbishop of Bamenda. There's the Bishop in Banso, there's the Bishop in Manfe, there's one in Kumba, and there's one in Boya, the one you call Bibi. I will come to him. He
Mm-hmm.
went there as their own representative. They mandated him to go there. And for them, they believed that a two-state federation would be a good approach. He went there with that directive from his other colleagues. What happened at the Grand National Dialogue, as told by Andrew himself, he got there and changed course without consulting his other colleagues. Why? Because a certain Mokete, an agent of the CPDM, a member of the Central Committee, had told him that it was impossible for the Northwest and Southwest to live together. He changed course. He did not only change course, he changed course and became the official representative of the oppressor. He took the mandate to travel around and convince us. The question is, I've said this on many other occasions, how could a man of that caliber, a man of that religious standing, ever buy the notion that Northwest and Southwest could not live together? Because if there was anybody who could ever defend that theory of Northwest and Southwest living together, it is the bishop, it is the Archbishop of Bamenda, it is Andrew Nkia himself. Because he's the Archbishop of Bamenda. Bamenda is
Yeah.
what they call the North. He's the son of the Southwest. He works in Bamenda. Bibi, that's whose name you have just mentioned, there is the Bishop of Boya. He's not the son of the Southwest. He's from the Northwest. And so if these people can work together in the church, without saying I'm from the Southwest, I'm from the Northwest, how could somebody with more normal faculties accept such religious, such political bending of facts? And so this is why we fought him. And we think that he's a courtier. And I will end with his friend, his adopted son, called TB Abuya, who is in Buya right now, and the events that happen in Malende, that's his diocese. This is the guy who goes around preaching that mercy has returned. And of course, these are the church goers. Then they end with Funky, who just retired. Funky is no other person. He was the moderator of the Presbyterian Church. But in addition to being the moderator of the Presbyterian Church, he comes from Akwaya. Where all the people of Akwaya are now in Nigeria fleeing the war. The last I heard, I'm not sure whether it was true. After they removed him from his position as moderator, his only heard that he being in Akwaya was bent down by the military. But this is the guy who goes on preaching normalcy, preaching it in the church, taking the pulpit to lie to the public. And so these are bought agents, knowingly or unknowingly. They have become bought agents. But a good number of them are benefiting from the church, from the largest of Yaoundé. Andrew does not do his missions for peace for nothing. He's paid for. Yaoundé never lacks money to pay. And we remember the last, a few weeks ago, when he went to Etudi to meet Ngongo, even against the wishes of his other brothers and sisters, brothers in the priesthood and the bishops, to say, look, we will accompany you before, during, and after the elections. This before the elections. He's standing in Etudi, where people are being arrested, where Kamto is being cheated publicly. And he says he will accompany Ngongo before this is done. During, how will you expect peace to be during the elections when people are openly cheated? Cheated without even hiding. It is political armed robbery. They robbed Kamto publicly that everybody saw. But Bishop Andrew will not say it. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Wow, we're learning so much from you, Barrister. You talked about Weber. I just want people to remember that popular phrase that everybody remembers Weber of. When injustice becomes the law, resistance, becomes a duty.
Resistance becomes a duty.
Yes, when justice becomes a law, resistance becomes a duty. So it's really a duty for us, Southern Cameroons, Ambazonians, to resist till we have total control of our territory. Talking about people like Samuel Funky, there was this book that was written years ago, the Presbyterian Church, the Church in a Changing Cameroon, the Church in a Changing Cameroon. And this has a lot of information about the politics in those days. Reverend Awasum was the moderator at that time when this book was published. And you could tell how those people, the leaders of the church, were really on the side of the people. You know, even though they were afraid for their lives, it was obvious that they were side for the people. And I think they will be crawling, in their graves now to know what people like Funky have done since then, standing on the side of the cruel, the bias, and all the politicians that are causing the havoc on our people. We're going to move on to the next topic. The next topic, which is very, very important, and I think this is going to be our core topic for today, the origin of the Ambazonian problem. It has a lot of information, and I want you to take your time to really talk to the people so that they understand where this all started and why we're here today. So if you can listen to that audio now, the origin of the Ambazonian problem, this will be a perfect time.
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Truth in resistance, clarity in crisis. Today is Monday, September 1st, 2025. Our editorial today is titled The Origin of the Ambazonian Problem. Part 1, the Federal Foundation of 1961. Fellow Ambazonians, good day. The roots of our problem lie in the Federal Constitution of 1961, one of the most consequential bargains in African post-colonial history. On September 1st, 1961, the draft of the Federal Constitution was completed. 1 month later, on October 1st, 1961, it came into effect. The Federal Republic of Cameroon was born, a fragile union between two colonial legacies. East Cameroon, the former French administered territory which had gained independence on January 1st, 1960 under President Ahmadou Ahidjo, loyal ally of Paris. West Cameroon, the former British administered Southern Cameroon, which had voted in the February 1961 United Nations plebiscite to join Cameroon after Britain and the United Nations denied its plea for full independence. The Constitution created a federal framework. West Cameroon retained its House of Assembly and House of Chiefs. East Cameroon kept its National Assembly. At the federal level, there was a president, a vice president, and a federal National Assembly. Ahmadou Ahidjo became the first president of the federation. Django Funcha became vice president. And then came the most important safeguard, Article 47. Any proposal to revise the present constitution which impairs the unity and integrity of the federation shall be inadmissible. That was the legal firewall, the guarantee that federalism could not be abolished. But even then, the French-trained bureaucracy in Yaoundé considered federation a transitional phase. The seeds of betrayal were already planted. Part 2, the breach of federalism in 1972. Barely a decade later, Ahmadou Ahidjo struck. In 1972, after discovery of crude oil in Victoria, Ahmadou Ahidjo called for a national referendum under the pretext of strengthening national unity. The vote took place on May 20th, 1972. But this referendum was a direct violation of Article 47. It asked citizens to abolish the federation and create a unitary state. The results were nothing short of theatrical. West Cameroon had a population of 800,000 with only 200,000 registered to vote. Out of 179,000 ballots cast, official figures claimed more than 99% voted yes. Only 46 people were reported to have voted no. Most voters never even saw the draft constitution. On June 2nd, 1972, a new constitution came into force. Article 1 declared, the Federal Republic of Cameroon shall become a unitary state under the name United Republic of Cameroon. With that single act, West Cameroon was erased. Reactions from leaders. Django Funcha already resigned in 1970. Later, in 1994, he led a delegation to the United Nations declaring his people had been deceived. Augustin Ngomjua, his successor as Prime Minister of West Cameroon, opposed the referendum but was silent. Solomon Tandong Muna, who replaced Funcha as Vice President, aligned with Ahidjo and helped push the unitary project, a betrayal in the eyes of many West Cameroonians. Thus, the destruction of the Federation was both a constitutional violation and a political conspiracy. Part 3, the consequences and the Ambazonian question. The consequences were immediate and lasting. West Cameroon's House of Assembly and House of Chiefs were dissolved. Federal autonomy was swept away. The equal partnership promised in 1961 was replaced with subordination to Yaoundé. The voluntary federation became an annexation enforced by Ahidjo and backed by Paris. International silence. The United Nations, which had supervised the plebiscite, stood silent. Britain, the administering authority, turned its back. France celebrated its protege's consolidation of power. The heart of the problem, fellow Ambazonians. This struggle is not about language. It is not about culture. It is about a broken constitutional pact, an illegal abolition of federalism, the denial of the right to self-government under international law. The truth is simple. Ambazonia did not secede. Ambazonia was swallowed. And because there was never a treaty of union, we must now reassert our independence as a free nation and live in peace with the Republic of Cameroon. This has been the voice of Ambazonia, truth in resistance, clarity in crisis. Today's editorial was titled The Origin of the Ambazonian Problem. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and stay united.
Wow, this is so much information, and it's really important to keep on educating our people so that they don't forget why we continue to fight, why we continue to stand our ground, because it's all based on the truth. Barrister, before I ask you specific question, I went to London recently with my husband, and I went through the archives, and I'm going to share with you, I have the in the Southern House of the first session in 1954. So these are debates that were taken in the House. And the reason I'm bringing this up is to show that we were really a government that took care of our own matters, our own issues. And the Southern Cameroon's House of Assembly members at that time, you had the Commissioner of Cameroon's, my computer keeps on switching on me, Brigadier, I may have to just print this thing so that it doesn't keep on moving, Honorable E.J. Gibbons, and then the Commissioner of the Cameroons, of course, I just mentioned the name, then the Deputy Commissioner of the Cameroon, the Honorable J. Brian Baker, the Legal Secretary, the Honorable C.A. Burton, the Financial and Development Secretary, the Honorable J. Murray, the Doctor of Honorable, then Dr. The Honorable E.M. Endeley, the Honorable S.A. George, the Reverend and Honorable J.C. Kangson, the Honorable S.T. Mona. Okay, then they had official members of the House. They had this Brigadier E.G. Gibbons again, Brian Baker, C.A. Burton, and M.J. Murray. And then they had elected members of the House. Now you had other names that we are familiar with. J.M. Bukwe of Kumba Division, E.M. Endele of Victoria Division, J.N. Foncha of Bamenda Division, S.A. George of Manfe Division, J.C. Kangson of Womb Division, V.T. Lianjo of Bamenda Division, E.K. Martin of Victoria Division, S.E. Ncha of Manfe Division, J.T. Nze of Kambe Division, J. Nsami of Kambe Division, and F.N. Sone of Kumba Division. Then they have other information here. So they had their first debates. This is an extensive document. I'm going to share this with you because I would like for us to talk about this in the
I didn't quite get your question. I didn't get your question. You're frozen. Yeah, what was your question?
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. Today's editorial is titled Toothless Watchdogs. The United Nations and international organizations pretend to be guardians of democracy, but in reality, they are toothless dogs. They bark in public, then fall silent when the money arrives. Paul Biya has mastered the art. For decades, he has poured Cameroon's fortune into bribing presidents, international bodies, cultic leaders, and multinational corporations. In return, they close their eyes to his crimes. To the ordinary African, these once mighty institutions are now a laughingstock. We hear big speeches from Antonio Guterres and others, beautiful words about peace and justice, but when it comes to Cameroon, those speeches end in silence. No action, no sanctions, no real consequences, just statements, just concern. Where were these international bodies when Professor Maurice Kamto was illegally eliminated from the presidential race? Weren't UN staff on the ground in Yaoundé to witness the charade firsthand? What did the British High Commissioner do? Send confidential cables back to London and then pretend nothing happened? International bodies have become a big charade, and the money deployed to do nothing is an insult to the ordinary person who suffers under tyranny. France fights democracy in the Sahel while condoning genocide in Ambazonia in broad daylight. That hypocrisy is the clearest sign that these institutions are not neutral referees, but actors in the game of oppression. Dr. Samuel Ikomisako, President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, has made the truth plain. Ambazonia's destiny cannot be tied to fraudulent processes in Yaoundé. Our people cannot legitimize dictatorship dressed up as democracy. Our struggle rests on truth, justice, and sovereignty. This is why Ambazonia must never depend on the UN or foreign powers. Our future lies in our own resistance, in our own unity, and in our own truth. This has been the voice of Ambazonia, truth in resistance, clarity in crisis.
Well, that segment is dealing with truthless watchdogs. Who's a watchdog? The watchdogs are the people who are supposed to watch over what is going on. In terms of our struggle, who are these? The watchdog organization is the United Nations. It is the UN that led us into this. It is the UN that is supposed to make sure that what we signed up for was respected. Besides that, under the UN, we have different organizations. We call them regional organizations that include the African Union, and so on and so forth. And so, why are these called toothless bulldogs? It's because they are truthless. They let us do this thing, and they cannot do it. But we should be that, I think, that the United Nations was formed in 1945. It had essentially three goals to achieve. The first goal was to prevent wars. The second goal was to respect human rights. And the third goal was to enforce their own agreements, treaties signed between member states of the organization. That was from 1945. Where are they, one must ask, in this our crisis? What happened? What happened in 1961? And now we are here. Where is the United Nations? The basic principle is that they are no longer there, or they have refused to be there. Because as I've said, we got into this thing through the United Nations Organization General Assembly resolutions. And so, not having had independence by ourselves, we are out of it. Because you don't petition to United Nations unless you are a member state. You must be a member to take cases there. And so, first, as I've said, they were created to stop wars. But now we're in war. What can we do? What can be done to stop the wars through the United Nations? The key sections of it is the Security Council and the International Court of Justice. But these institutions, the Security Council and the International Court of Justice, are designed or kept for member states only. And so, you will know that the United Nations resolution Security Council is made up of 15 members. It used to be 11. It has been expanded to 15 members. But that has not changed much because the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, who in fact originated the United Nations, are still there. They have all the rights. Remember, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council include the United States, the UK, France, Russia, and China. And so these people are not there. They can't come into help us because the United Nations was created for interest. They didn't create the United Nations to help people. The United Nations to help their own interest. Especially these 5 people. Why are these 5 members? They are the ones who fought the wars. They were the key players in the war, the Second World War. Mostly the Second World War. Many people put it the First and Second World War. They were the key players there. And what about? It was fighting Germany. What was it all about? At the bottom line was economic interest and military interest. Africans might have fought there and other countries, fighting in defense of their principles. In other words, their colonies. For example, Cameroon was fighting, they were supporting France. If Senegalese troops were there, they were supporting France. If Nigerian troops were there, they were supporting the UK. They were not members, but they were fighting on behalf of their provinces. And so the United Nations cannot do much as far as we are concerned because it is not meant for us. And so we have to look for a way to deal with it. We can still find something in the charter to help us. If we turn, for example, to Article 33 of the charter, once we go to Article 33 of the charter, we must find a way which deals with regional organizations, where the African Union can come in, where the West African Economic Community can come in, where the Commonwealth can come in. These are all available avenues for us. And so until we go back to those things, we have no way out. But again, now that we are here, we have to get back to it. I just wish that we get connected with Madam Patience so we can have an informed debate on these things.
I am back. I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, but
Yes,
okay.
I'm not sure what happened.
waiting for you to come.
Yes, thank you so much. But I don't know whether you've covered this. I wanted us to talk about that tripartite conference a little bit because in August, before all these things happened, before the Constitution, there was a conference that happened in Yaoundé in 1961, right?
Yes.
How important was that conference in terms of laying the foundation for the Constitution that ended up being no constitution in terms of them not taking the position of West Cameroon?
Now, before I address the tripartite conference, it is important for us to know because the subheading was the origin of the Ambazonian problem.
Yes.
What is the origin of our problem? Our problem is not in the tripartite. No. Our problem, the Ambazonian problem started from day one. On one, deceit, dishonesty.
Yeah.
Let me know another bit. We were deceived. The British lied. When the British administrator said, look, these people are not capable of having independence, they were just lying.
Yeah.
Because they had information on them. They knew how we were rich in oil. They were lying. First, because from day one, from 1946, that they assumed the administration of the territory, they never intended ever to give us independence. Remember, before 1946, they have been administering the territory since 1922 as a League of Nations territory.
Yeah.
So they knew the in and out of the territory. And I've said this before. What they gave them was a territory called Cameroon under UK administration. And they gave the other part Cameroon under France administration.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to do, they were to administer the territories each to independence as as per Article 76B of the Charter. What does 76B say? Said the people should either be independent or self-governing. And so by 1959, that we are talking about this thing of plebiscite and so on and so forth, Southern Cameroon was already self-governing. We already had the government in Boya, a prime minister, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
French Cameroon was also self-governing. They had their own in 1957. So we were past the level of asking us to join somebody else. But again, to tell the part of the dishonesty. Now, Cameroon under UK was one territory. Because they did not want us to have independence, they carved it out into two, which is now called one Northern Cameroon and the other Southern Cameroon. That was allowed under the treaty, under the 1946 agreement. But it should have been for administrative purposes only.
Yeah.
But they carved this thing out into two, tried to maintain Southern Cameroon, which are again today as a unit. They went to Northern Cameroon and partitioned into different counties, cut into patches. So there was no continuity there. And so the whole idea was to absorb the territory into Nigeria, which they tried. Let me just go back a bit. What Ndele and the rest did in 1953 in Nigeria, when they left Enugu, was an embarrassment to London. They had not thought about that. It is after that they started naming those administrators that you named there. Now, they had not contemplated that we're going to go away. But when Ndele on 1953, they walked away, the 13 people who were there, have their names here. Mm-hmm. When they walked away, I said, enough is enough. They were now playing catch up. In 1954, they started appointing those people you are mentioning about. And then, okay, just go and manage them. But the idea of absorbing us was still intact. Which is why in 1952, they had successfully divided what was one territory into two colonies, into two trust territories. And in November 1959, they organized a plebiscite in Northern Cameroon.
Yeah.
To ask them if they want to join Nigeria come 1st October to get independence together. They were not contemplating independence for them. Or they will wait for another time. The person will wait for another time. Mm-hmm. But back to us, I say it was a whole story of deceit.
Yeah.
There's a deceit of the UK administration. And then let us go to why we are fighting. Where is the origin of the problem? It was a total deceit, fraudulent deceit by Ahidjo. Because what we are fighting for, independence and so on and so forth, did not fall from the blues. Joining Cameroon did not fall from the blues. They have been debating this thing from 1957 to 1959. Cameroon was not yet independent. Cameroon Republic was not yet independent. It was still under France. But they had a self-governing authority under Ahidjo. And so they were asking these people should go and join this. They didn't even know what they were talking about. So they invited Ahidjo to United Nations in 1959. And if you permit me, I will just get what he did there. When they invited Ahidjo in 1959, 25th of February 1959, they asked Ahidjo, this joining that we are trying to make, what do you think about it? This is before the United Nations Assembly. Before the United Nations 849th Assembly. Mr. Ahidjo, these your brothers of the speaking English want to join you. What do you think about that? Ahidjo said, quoting him, if our brothers want to join us, we promise before the United Nations that we shall not use our majority to suppress them. Mm-hmm. We shall discuss the terms of this joining, if they so decide, on equal basis, on the basis of equality. This is quoting Ahidjo in 1959. Mm-hmm. He was deceiving the United Nations. He was deceiving Anglophones, the French and the Ndeles who were following up this thing. But this is in writing. This is from the United Nations records.
Right.
Just deceit. Why do I call it deceit? So you can go back to your tripartite. Mm-hmm. Tripartite was in August 1961.
61.
Before the tripartite was the Fumban conference
In
of
July.
July 17th, which conference was supposed to be a constitutional conference to make proposal for the constitution.
Right.
Funchal and his delegation went there. But before they went there, they had met in Bamenda in June. They called it the Bamenda All-Party Conference, and assembled what they believed was going to be the content of the federal constitution. And so when the next month came and they went there with that package, it turned out they got there, it was not a constitutional conference, because they never met to discuss any conference there, any constitution there. They never met anywhere to discuss it. When they got there, Ahiju with his 12-man delegation, Funchal with his 15-man delegation, including Fonlon I mentioned, who was to serve as the interpreter. Ahiju just simply open a room and get them to talk. Make your proposals to my constitution and bring to me. And they sat there from 17th to 21st. They only had 2 joining and the closing sessions. There's nowhere in the world, even in a family meeting that you and me belong to, you cannot draw a constitution within 2 days.
No.
So they didn't draw any constitution. They made some proposals, which they gave to Ahiju to accept or to reject. Then come to your tripartite I mentioned about. Tripartite came in August. It was not to discuss the constitution. They met now in their own day. Funchal went, I think, with 12 people. They met Ahiju. They were not discussing the constitution. They were discussing transition. They talked about, for example, the currency. They were using the pound sterling. They talked about our customs. So just how we're going to do it. And then they talked. But because of lack of time, why do I say it was all deceit? After all these things came and passed, to tell you deceit, again, after they purportedly had the so-called constitution put out there, what happened? A year after that, just a year after that, Ahiju convened in 1962 in the Bolova, the conference of his CNU party. And what did he do? He told the people there, publicly in the Bolova, that he had never intended to make any federal constitution. That the measures he had put in the so-called federal constitution were simply transitional. That conference in the Bolova held between 4th and 8th of July 1962, just exactly a year after Fumban. Ahiju made this speech out there that there was nothing like a federal constitution. He had just made some small amendments to his own constitution to accommodate his brothers Anglophones. And that for the time being, that was a transitional thing. It was just a temporary thing. They are needed to have anything called federation. And so that's why I say, a great deal of deceit, which we did not know, and people did not catch the lines. This is Ahiju 1962. Just 1 year to everything. 1 year into the so-called Federal Constitution of 1961. He's talking now in July, a year after Funchal and his team left Fumban. He told the world, publicly in the convention, we had never intended any federation. Where is the promise he had made in 1959? He was lying. Where is the constitution that he purportedly wanted to draw in Fumban? He was lying. Where are the things that the purportedly wanted to do in the tripartite? He was just lying and deceiving people. And then again, as it progressed, for lack of time, you find that the thing has been so staged, so well staged. Every 10 years, within every 10 years, something changed dramatically. Since 1961, put out something in the federal constitution. 10 years into that, 1972, they abolished it. 10 years to that, to the change, they go back to their to their country, the Republic of Cameroon. So it is well planned deceit. We could not catch those lines. And again, we are saying all this now again. This is not for you and me. this information I'm giving out is being sent to our brothers and sisters who are still sitting there and dreaming of something they call a federation to go reflect whatever thing they got in 1961. If I were to go to 1961, 1961 was not even a federal constitution. It was never a federal constitution. Because in a federal constitution, you expect to find the powers of the states and the powers
Right.
of the central government. In
Right.
1961, there was no power of the state. Article 38, only one article, chapter 4, I think, powers of the states. Only one sentence. Whatever thing is not mentioned somewhere, the states can take it. How could Frontier survive as a government without any powers to execute anything? And so that was not a federation at all. It was deceit from day one. And why was it? See, I done all those things, as we even found today, because it was not Ahujo doing it. It was France doing it.
France.
France was
Yeah.
copying from their own history. France was copying from Louis XIV, who said, he's quoted everywhere, L'État, c'est moi. The state of France belonged to
Me.
Louis XIV.
Yeah.
And the state of Cameroon today, the state of Cameroon that we speak today, belongs to Paul Biya. The fingerprints of the president are everywhere. They cannot pass law in the National Assembly without the president authorizing them. They can, even when they pass the law, it must come from the presidency. And each and every single law, 90% of them, will end up somewhere asking that there should be a presidential decree to implement this, a presidential decree to implement this. They say decentralization, yes, very good idea. But behind decentralization, there is another thing they say the president will do. He will appoint by decree administrators. Each of who person appointed is called chef d'etat. He controls his own territory. To the extent that, I think just last week, I think the prefect of somewhere in the north there has signed a decree threatening to dip people who come into that division that you do not like. So that is the origin of our problem.
Yeah.
The origin was pure deceit. It is still deceit. Because as we move on, we are now almost 9 years into the war. What is truth about the Grand National Dialogue? What is honest about the so-called special status? It's all deceit. Even the special status they give is a transition to assimilation when the temperature cools. That's the bottom line. They can quote me anywhere. It's a transition to that. That's what they try to use frontier. That's what they try to use in the lay. At the time they will take you, they will use you to implement part of it. When they get use of it, they throw you away. That's how they throw away frontier, replacing with Mona. But in that long line of Mona, Frontier, Fonka, Shang, Lorang that you mentioned there, E.T. Igwe, who of them ever retired as a happy person?
None of them.
Even me, Frondi. Frondi was dead long before he was physically buried. So the issue, it was deceit, it is still deceit. And so that's the reason why we fight. And we tell our brothers who still daydream in something they call a federation. Federation of 10 states, 2 states, 5 states would never work.
Yeah.
Because Cameroon is still France under Louis XIV. Louis IV. The 14th, sorry. Under France, Louis IV, the 14th. Because again, like, let me just give a good example. If you go to Cameroon today, one of the public crises that we find all the time is land disputes. Oh, they violated this land law. What land law are they talking about? The law never passed in the parliament. There's just a land ordinance. It was an ordinance signed by Mr. Ahujo in 1974. It's an ordinance, not even a decree. It has become law. Because they put it down in 1961 and 1972 that the president can rule by ordinance and that his ordinances have the power of law. And you are not allowed to challenge it. Only the president himself can challenge it. And so again, the origin of our Ambazonian problem is pure and simple deceit from the colonial master, deceit from the United Nations itself, because they could not claim that they don't know these things. How could they, for example, in 1608, how could they end one trust agreement 1966 of the 18th Amendment. They gave only one trust agreement. That's what when they signed. That's what Cameroon signed. Sorry, Britain signed. But in 16, we are ending the trust agreement twice. The right for paragraph 4B. With regard to Northern Cameroon, the trust will end on 1st of June. That's the same trust agreement. Then they go to paragraph 4B. With regard to Southern Cameroon, the trust will end on 1st October. The single trust of 1946 ending twice by the same United Nations. What else can be deceit more than this? So again, it's the complexity of this deceit. But the good thing we know that we believe in is that today, you and me, you went to London, you could go to a library and find those things. We're no longer of the 1961.
Right.
We know these things. What they did to our parents thinking that they would not know. The world became so small. I wasn't there, but I'm reading these things from the documents. The good thing that we have is that the United Nations does not bend documents. They don't treat it like Paul Biya and the who came to Boya, carry the files from the archives and went and bend them. It's not been like that. They are still there. So, to make the long story short, the origin of Ambazonian problem is federation thing, is deceit.
Deceit.
Attribute every role, each side of it to everybody. That's to us. As far as we're concerned, I can just describe it personally. It was naivety. We didn't understand. We believe in this thing. You go take a woman to marry her, hoping to make children. She tells you a lie. That I've not had children. Where she has been married, she had twins somewhere else. You don't know. And so, will you claim, no, you're just being an honest man. So, when deceit, it is still deceit. Let our brothers know it, our sisters know it. The future politicians will replace will know their tricks.
Yeah.
Which is why they don't even want it. They have never wanted the issue of form of state to be discussed anywhere. And as you speak, teaching that history is banned. I remember I saw a book somewhere in the midst of secondary education last week. They said somebody has published a book where he put Ambazonia there. That guy should be dismissed from his job. The book should be banned from the shelves. What is it? What is reading? If you don't like the book, read the book. You cannot ban a book which is just history. Put it there. Let us read God. Let us read other writers about 10, 15, 30 books that I read on the history. So again, it is all deceit. It is for us, it is naivety. Because I believe honestly that our brothers and sisters who are still talking about this federation thing, they are just being naive.
Yeah.
They are just cowards. Because their fear is not Cameroon, Southern Cameroon independence. No, their fear is that it's expensive. In they said they will kill you. They said that you might go to jail. It's not because they don't like it. If you go to the next day, they will fight you somewhere. But
Yeah.
sometimes only the blood of a tyrant will water the tree of liberty.
Absolutely.
And again, as Mr. Weber said, when injustice becomes the law, resistance becomes
the TT. Yes.
the
Wow. So, in a nutshell, you're just educating us that the origin of the Amazonian problem is deceit. Deceit from the United Nations, deceit from the British, deceit from France, deceit from La République du Cameroon. That is just the bottom line. And they almost got away with it because if they had just taken care of Southern Cameroons, and even just as recently as 2016, when the teachers and lawyers went on the strike and asked for just those basic things, and they were met with helicopter gunshots and all the like, if they had just retreated and said, okay, these people are just demanding these two simple things, let's give it to them. Let's pull away all these French teachers from their schools and have their schools be controlled by the English educators. Let's have their legal system be just what it was before, a system where you're innocent until proven guilty, the common law. If they had just let it be, we will not be here today, despite the deceit from years ago. But unfortunately, they thought that we were cockroaches and dogs that we will not fight. Here it is. Weber said it. Injustice has become law for too long. So resistance has to be a duty till we gain our freedom. We have two more short audios videos, and then we'll end the program. Looking at the time, so let's watch the one about the toothless watchdog. It's a very short one. I'll let the barrister comment, and then the last one will be on the silence of the United Nations. Since they have the General Assembly coming up in September, I thought we should watch that one also. So please, the toothless watched, unless it's been played while I was off camera, the toothless watchdog, please.
This is the voice of Ambazonia. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. Today's editorial is titled Toothless Watchdogs. The United Nations and international organizations pretend to be guardians of democracy, but in reality, they are toothless dogs. They bark in public, then fall silent when the money arrives. Paul Biya has mastered the art. For decades, he has poured Cameroon's fortune into bribing presidents, international bodies, cultic leaders, and multinational corporations. In return, they close their eyes to his crimes. To the ordinary African, these once mighty institutions are now a laughingstock. We hear big speeches from Antonio Guterres and others, beautiful words about peace and justice, but when it comes to Cameroon, those speeches end in silence. No action, no sanctions, no real consequences, just statements, just concern. Where were these international bodies when Professor Maurice Kamto was illegally eliminated from the presidential race? Weren't UN staff on the ground in Yaoundé to witness the charade firsthand? What did the British High Commissioner do? Send confidential cables back to London and then pretend nothing happened? International bodies have become a big charade, and the money deployed to do nothing is an insult to the ordinary person who suffers under tyranny. France fights democracy in the Sahel while condoning genocide in Ambazonia in broad daylight. That hypocrisy is the clearest sign that these institutions are not neutral referees, but actors in the game of oppression. Dr. Samuel Ikomisako, President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, has made the truth plain. Ambazonia's destiny cannot be tied to fraudulent processes in Yaoundé. Our people cannot legitimize dictatorship dressed up as democracy. Our struggle rests on truth, justice, and sovereignty. This is why Ambazonia must never depend on the UN or foreign powers. Our future lies in our own resistance, in our own unity, and in our own truth. This has been the voice of Ambazonia, truth in resistance, clarity in crisis.
Yes, Barrister. We're going to conclude with this video. But before we do that, we're talking about the United Nations. You may have read what Thibault Nash said about the United Nations, talking about the current elections that are coming up. I think I shared it with you, but let me see. It says that the United Nations raises fears over Cameroon election clampdown. The United Nations on Tuesday set growing restrictions in Cameroon surrounding the upcoming presidential elections, raise fears about whether voters can freely choose their candidate. President Paul Biya, the world's oldest head of state at 92, is seeking a new 7-year term to extend his nearly 43-year in power in elections on October 12. A safe and enabling human rights environment is essential for peaceful, inclusive, and credible elections. It regrettably appears that this is not the case in Cameroon, the UN Rights Chief Volker Turk said. His office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights said raising restrictions were being imposed on opposition activities, with several gatherings banned. There have also been concerns regarding the exclusion of some political figures from the race, as well as irregularities in voter registration, OHCHR said in a statement. It also cited reports that opposition candidates and their supporters had been intimidated and threatened. So we're talking about United Nations, Toothless Watchdog. Barrister, how will you really describe the United Nations, considering what they've done in our history from the very beginning and what they are doing all along till now that there's an election coming and they are commenting as just watchers and not really setting any important, making any important decisions?
Well, it's quite difficult for me to explain because it looks like most people, I don't know whether most or many people understand how this. Explaining earlier, the nation was created for three main purposes, three only. It is found in the first paragraph of the first rule of the United Nations, paragraph 1, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. Paragraph 2, to affirm faith in the fundamental human rights, in the dignity and the worth of the people. That's paragraph. Paragraph 3, establish possibilities, agreements signed between countries. That's the main rule. In this case, or within paragraph 2, they consider elections as people's right to choose to do what. That's where they fall of the United Nations. But the United Nations Charter is a declaration. With the 190-something have the democracy, different forms of elections. And I can tell you, in fact, the United Nations does not organize elections for anybody.
Yeah.
What they do is they can assist you technically in the country. And the only thing they do publicly is to be observers. Observers don't determine how elections are organized. They report the outcome. And I can say this from a privileged position. I have served in the United Nations in Burundi. I served in Cote d'Ivoire. My function, my job description there was United Nations Elections Officer. So I think I know a bit about the elections as far as the United Nations is concerned.
Right.
They come there to assist. Every country has its own election rules. They come to assist you if you want. That's what we did. We didn't make the laws. For example, for the avoided elections, where Ouattara won or did not win, we didn't make the laws for them. We implemented their laws. We went to Burundi. The United Nations, they all come with the electoral code. They had the electoral code. We helped them to implement it. For example, let me just illustrate. The electoral code is you have to go to a polling station. A polling station is supposed to be free. When we go to Burundi, for example, they were doing exactly what they do in Cameroon. They were making electoral polling stations in houses. We said now, elections are one day. We will be a touch place there with palm fronts. So that's how you do it, if you want it to be fair. We didn't make the law. And so the United Nations is, as Dr. Munga, is a toothless thing in terms of those things. But the bottom line, that because we don't have time, is simply this. You have the government that you deserve. If somebody is thinking that the United Nations will come and help or protest for Kamto, it will not. All of us admire, for example, the Burkinabe president. We admire him, everyone loves him, but he was never elected by anybody. He was a cool guy. He took the government by force, and the whole world is admiring him. So we don't expect the United Nations to come and do it for us. Either be this thing or what. At the end of the day, what the United Nations does is only to endorse what you have done. We are fighting for independence. We don't expect the United Nations to come and fight for us. The best they will do is to come to separate what they call peacekeeping force. Okay,
Right.
stop fighting. But then, when you win, when you fight the thing and win, they endorse your victory. By doing what? By making you a member of the club. They admitted to the United Nations after fighting and winning your war. They didn't fight for you. The case of Southern Sudan is a great example. Southern Sudan was never like us. They were just one Sudan. They fought the central government, I think, for 30 years. We were almost 10 years, almost what they did. They won the independence. They were admitted to the United Nations. They sit there at parity with Sudan. And so, if we ever think that they will come to help us, no, the fight is ours. We complain to them. They are just observers. What Tebonog was saying, what the United Nations Office for Human Rights is reporting, is that look, they're excluding people. This thing can bring war. Come to can go to the street and this will bring. That's what they're telling you. They are afraid that some war will break out. But once they drove away Kamto, and excuse my words, and Kamto folded his tail between his two legs and went to his house. That's his end. He cannot expect the United Nations to raise an army to come and make him win the elections. No. No. When Nifrodi won the election in 1992, everybody knew that he won. When they knocked him up and his supporters kept quiet, the United Nations could not come and say, but this is the guy who won. He ended up a dead man.
That's right.
The United Nations noted it. Well, this guy won, but they still have Cameroon still had the representative of the United Nations, and so on and so forth. And so it is here because we don't understand how the United Nations functions. If we were to enforce democracy, which one would you enforce? The democracy in the United States, the democracy in Russia, the one in the UK, the King Louis XIV of France, the one of North Korea or South Korea. These are all members of the United Nations.
Right.
And so you get what you deserve. You have to fight for it. But before we end this segment, let me go back to say, you said something before we got to this issue. Why did he not just give us what we wanted in 2016? Why did you not just say, why teachers? Let the teachers go. Let us take our teachers away. Let us take our magistrates away. No, you could not do that because the sending of French teachers or French magistrates was done by design. It was part of the deceit. It was part of this process of assimilation. Again, rest assured, in 1968, there was something in Boya called the French Cultural Center. That building is still there.
Yeah.
The director of that cultural center, they were sent there, people didn't know what he wrote a report from Boya, which he sent to France and copied Ahidjo, that this assimilation is not going fast enough. The idea of assimilation and reform is not going fast enough. This is just 7 years into the Union. So it was a calculated attempt. It was not something that somebody said, oh, I made a mistake. No, they didn't do that. It was calculated, which is why, again, they have outlawed, even as we speak, the idea of discussing the form of state anywhere in Cameroon. Which is why you all remember, we just talked about it. Wilbur is out on exile for doing what? For addressing the issue on the floor of Parliament. So, again, the United Nations is good, but it's a select club. You have to know how to navigate your way to it and then fight for what you want. You will not be admitted into the United Nations without the consent of the Security Council. But if you win your battle, the Security Council of 5 members who are always protecting the interests of the war of 1945 and the 1919, they will give in to you. And remember, who are these members again? They are France. France is sitting there to block you. They are a Great Britain that deceived us into this thing. They are sitting right there. They are the Americans. They are the Chinese. And they are the Russians. So they didn't create that thing to please you. They created that thing to save their own interest. Why have they not sanctioned France for stealing all the oil and everything from Africa? They will not do it because that is their zone of interest.
Right.
Protected under the United Nations chapter by the 3rd paragraph, how to enforce treaties. Cameroon has signed up to a treaty with France. Ivory Coast signed. They signed agreements which become binding. They're enforceable by that their court. under the United Nations Charter. And so they didn't design that thing to help you, no. But again, you get what you deserve, but you have to fight for it. Ambazonia is fighting for it. We will get what
Exactly.
we deserve. The idea of saying that we're too small or too poor, I've said it yesterday.
This
God
it.
willing, we shall survive and we shall give aid to the people of Cameroon. Financial aid. We shall send them volunteers to go and teach in their schools.
Right.
We will prove to them that what the Englishman says, small, not be sick. We're just small, we're not sick. Over to
That's
you.
right. Thank you so much. And to conclude this section and conclude the show, I want to read something that was written by Dennis Atemkem, just a small paragraph comparing British Southern Cameroons and Cameroon. It says the British Southern Cameroons and Cameroon are two distinct and incompatible peoples. They do not speak the same language, do not have the same colonial culture, do not have the same state culture, do not have the same identity or culture, do not have the same educational system, do not have the same legal system, do not see eye to eye on what constitutes public good, and have been in confrontation from the first day of annexation. It is like forcing France and Britain to live in one house. I like that last sentence. It's like forcing France and Britain to live in one house. So, as you just said, Barrister, we are small people, but we're powerful people, and we'll get that final destination acquired when we get to Boya. But I just would like to hear your closing remarks as we end the program today.
Yes, I think let me take my closing remarks from what Atemkun wrote. That's what Atemkun wrote. But he's talking about a rational society. We speak the same, we don't speak the same language, but they are incorporating us to speak their language, which is what is going on now. If you go to Yaoundé, they see our brothers and sisters who live there, they fight to speak more French than English.
Right.
That is the assimilation process. That started, is ongoing. And then you can only resist. I just mentioned the earlier one when we started. I said Christian Tumi was supposed to go to Rome and study. He opted to go to France because he wanted to come and save the country. And he came, he saved them. He was sent to Yagua. There's nobody speaking English there. In fact, when he came to Yagua in 1970, I was almost speaking English there. He went to Garoua. He saved in Douala. Could you complain that Christian Tumi was not listening, could not understand French and English? No. He just saw Cardinal Andro, with Ngongo. What was he speaking? Then he sat on and bread with us. He was speaking French. So this assimilation has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
That has to stop. I think it's very, very right. But the French and the British will never go into one house where the French will learn to speak English instead of French, and the English will learn to speak French instead of English. That is the difference.
Right.
Because that's why we're facing this problem. That's why we're facing the problem even in Ambazonia. We have Ambazonians who prefer to be called Cameroonian because they want to wear a bigger coat.
Mm-hmm.
Who would rather escape from Bamenda and go and live in Yaoundé than seek shelter in Boya, and vice versa. And so, again, the bottom line, my conclusion remark is this. You see, Dr. Mungwa is doing so much.
Mm-hmm.
This thing that you started, this online communication and writing, is going viral. And most importantly, it is also spoken in English. What we are doing here is not going unnoticed. I can tell you more Francophones follow us than Anglophones do follow. I have a ton of friends who are Francophones. They call me. I saw you on ABC. I heard you saying this. So we are not losing anything. Let us be encouraged. Victory is sure. But no victory has ever come by the majority. Or the minority fight, or the minority will die. They will not kill everybody. But at the end of the day, victory will come. And those are our doubting Thomases, I guarantee you. They will be the first one to get to Boya.
Right.
And well done.
Yes.
And again, let me just give this
Absolutely.
example. We're fighting here. Remember CDN that went to Canada. They invited all
Yes.
of us. The people were really fighting. Very few people went to Canada. But intruders, observers, professors were the first people to gather their coats and they were in Canada because they thought that was going to be something that would make them glory. It was going to be something that would benefit from it. You and me, I never showed up there in spite of all my suffering. But they went there. That is something that will
Yeah.
happen. Go to both.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged. Only freedom fighters fight. Freedom fighters don't rule. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on the program on the horizon, the voice of the Amber Woman. I really, really appreciate your
Thank you for
wealth of
having me.
knowledge. I really appreciate your wealth of knowledge. Ambazonians appreciate you and thank you. And until we see next time on the horizon, we're concluding the program. There's going to be a meeting. I think it's starting right now, APP meeting. So those who are watching, please, you can go ahead and join the APP meeting that the president called to talk about very important things that are coming up in our quest. And rightfully, as the barrister said, nobody will give you your freedom. United Nations will not give us the freedom. Britain will not give us our freedom. France will not give us our freedom. Of course, La Republique will not give us our freedom. We will have to take our freedom ourselves. And that is what we're doing. And our ASA have shown us that they are doing that because of what they've done today in the Southern Zone. So without any further ado, I want to thank you for being on the horizon today, the voice of the Amber Woman. I want to thank those producing us for also taking care of us, and we appreciate you. Till we see next week, have a great weekend. Thank you so much, and bye for now.